When thinking of the different wrestling games that came out during the 6th generation of consoles, each one has a unique history with their entries. Most remember the PlayStation 2 for the yearly SmackDown title, some of which have gone on to be considered some of the best wrestling games of all time. The GameCube had the WrestleMania and Day of Reckoning series, which in some ways were evolving the gameplay of the Aki N64 titles while also experimenting with different types of game modes. But when it comes to the original Xbox, it's certainly a mixed bag of titles. WWF Raw, developed by Anchor Incorporated, had good graphics and unique elements with its gameplay, but also lacked other modes and promised features that would have helped to utilize the hardware. Raw 2 would help fix most of the mistakes and include more matches that had been previously missing, while also having a fairly stacked roster for a WWE title of that era, and even has elements within its season mode and creation suite that the 2K series today seems to lack. But a whole new team, Studio Gigante, would be brought in to help develop WrestleMania 21, the final WWE title exclusive to the original Xbox. And as far as talking about this particular title,
Game is broke, ladies and gentlemen!
The less said about the game, the better. Besides all the WWE licensed titles and a few third-party entries, most believe that the pro wrestling games released for Microsoft's first console were quite limited. However, there was one that never made its way outside of Japan, and was even published by Microsoft Studios themselves, a title that combines both professional wrestling and shoe fighting together in one package, and for whatever reason, it doesn't get brought up in conversation with the likes of the THQ and Acclaim titles, or even the Backyard Wrestling series. But I hope this video shows what it has to offer, and why it should be thrown into that conversation. Because on its own, it's a solid wrestling title that may have been forgotten about over 20 years after its original release. With all that said, today, we take a look at the Wild Rings for the original Xbox. Wild Rings would first be revealed at the 2002 Tokyo Game Show, as a part of the Xbox booth that also featured titles such as Crimson Sea, Panzer Dragoon Orta, and Blinx the Time Sweeper. In IGN's hands-on coverage of the game, writer Chris Carl said, "At this point, the wrestling engine is reminiscent of Acclaim's Legends of Wrestling. It's a pretty simple fighting system on the surface, where each face button handles a different kind of attack. It was difficult to determine whether there will be button combos or multiple move strings, and how complex the grappling system will be. However, one thing that adds to its depth is the variety of different wrestling styles. While one wrestler may be more of a grappler, another is a straight-up boxer. We played with both, and each has its merits, although the boxer's movesets seemed a bit limited. One thing is certain, the matches are very balanced and difficult to put away. 2 matches went to a 7th minute, and a third could not be decided before it was time to move on. In terms of character designs, there's the traditional high-flying wrestler wearing the trademark Mexican mask, a grappler who looks eerily like Andre the Giant, a small but grisly boxer type, and several generic-looking dudes of various nationalities. There's also an extensive character creation feature, which serves to expand the realm of possibilities ad infinitum. It's impossible to tell at this point whether Wild Rings will make it to American stores or not. We're leaning toward no at this point, due to the fact that Raw is already an exclusive Xbox wrestling title with the WWE license to boot. Wild Rings would get published by Microsoft Game Studios and released on the Xbox in Japan on April 10, 2003. It was developed by the Payon Corporation, a studio who has had a stellar catalog of games they've helped develop, including games for the Neo Geo Pocket Color such as SNK Gals Fighters, having a working relationship with Nintendo and helping to develop several Donkey Kong games for both the Wii and Nintendo DS, including Donkey Kong Barrel Blast and DK King of Swing, as well as helping Spike in developing Fire Pro Wrestling Z, another wrestling game released exclusively in Japan for the PlayStation 2. When setting up a match in Exhibition, you can choose to do a singles, tag team, 6-man tag, or battle royal. You can also change things such as the rules, with pro wrestling, shoe fighting, or custom set with individual conditions. You can also change the arena, ring canvas, the referee, and the background music. The game's roster, much similar to the Fire Pro series, has fictional in-game characters based on real-life counterparts from that time period. and if you look carefully, they even have their own familiar moves that can be hit during a match. As mentioned in the hands-on preview, Wild Reigns has 11 different classes or styles of characters, including Pro Wrestling or Pure Wrestling, American Wrestling, Lucha Libre, Shoot Wrestling or MMA, Total Fighting or Shoot Fighting, Judo, Amateur Wrestling, Sumo Wrestling, Karate, Boxing, and Kickboxing. You're able to face wrestlers or fighters who may have the same style, or you can mix up these different styles to see how each character can hit their moves or to stay on defense. When getting into a match, the first thing you'll likely see are near the top corners of the screen, with player indicators as well as icons to show how much damage you've taken as the match progresses. Wild Reigns has a simple control layout that feels easy to pick up and play. You move with the left thumbstick while clicking in to help block oncoming attacks. Right thumbstick usually flips over, picks up, or drags your opponent depending on the direction, but is also used for leaving and entering the ring, as well as climbing and descending the turnbuckles. The D-pad performs a taunt, Y lets you run around the ring, X to perform weak attacks, A to perform medium attacks, B for strong attacks, as well as general actions such as pinning a downed opponent and performing moves in certain situations. You can perform certain moves by either pressing the button or by pressing the button as well as moving the thumbstick up and down or left and right. The attack buttons also perform different actions when your opponent is down. Pressing X performs strikes, while holding X or A can perform a strong grapple or a submission, and of course B lets you pin them. When you perform a grapple with the right trigger, 2 meters will appear at the bottom of the screen with markers at certain spots, each one color-coded with the different types of attacks. The goal is to hit a marker on your meter first so you're able to hit one of those moves on your opponent. Though do keep in mind that this meter doesn't appear in multi-man matches, but it does work the same regardless of whatever match you're competing in. If you instead press the Y button before your opponent hits one of their markers, you'll either Irish whip them off the ropes and allow you to hit a rebound attack, or start a chain grappling sequence to throw them off before hitting a proper move. The left trigger performs a class-specific action depending on which style of wrestler or fighter you are. For example, luchadors can use the trigger to perform an evasive roll away from the opponent. Sumo wrestlers can squat and set up an attack or grapples with the face buttons, and boxers or kickboxers can duck and weave the opponent's punches. Now we look into the other game modes, starting with the character edit, where you can create a custom character or edit any of the default roster members. You can edit the profile, costume, movesets, and logic as you would in other wrestling games. As was also mentioned in the IGN article, there are a whole lot of creation options for either an original character or to create another real-life counterpart to add into the game. But a big component for this particular Create a Wrestler mode comes with the parameter settings, as you can spend points on strengths and attributes for your character, but there's also abilities you can put said points towards. Wild Reigns offers a vast amount of abilities that can either help improve your stats or offer handicaps if you want to play a match having a little bit of a disadvantage. Tournament mode lets you book singles or tag matches with 4, 8, or 16 matches in the bracket. League match has you running through different opponents in a round-robin tournament to score the most points and emerge as the victor, much similar to the format of the G1 Climax in New Japan. Champions Road puts you through a 30-man gauntlet to win either the Pro Wrestling or Total Fighting Championship. If you can survive the gauntlet, you'll not only unlock more parts for your created wrestler or fighter, but also get to defend and hopefully retain your championship in the title match mode. Overall, I feel that Payon put out a well-packaged fighting title. Well, depending on if you want to lean more towards the pro wrestling or MMA aspects of this game. From the included roster to the variety of styles and options within the Create a Wrestler mode, and a pretty easy control layout, Wild Reigns is a good choice if you're looking for an alternative non-WWE wrestling title on the original Xbox. That being said, however, the biggest complaint of mine when it comes to this game is the lack of a proper career or a season mode that other titles on the platform may offer, and having the Champions Road and title match modes to make up for it. I would have also mentioned how having an online mode where you could compete against other players would have also helped to benefit the game. The big issue with that suggestion, however, is the Xbox Live service wouldn't officially launch in Japan until November of 2003, meaning that local multiplayer is the only way to be able to face off against friends in matches. But in spite of the flaws and limitations that the Wild Rings had, it's honestly a shame that the teams at Xbox and/or Payon weren't able to somehow get this ported overseas, as I feel that having this title thrown in would have helped to add a little more variety to the very limited amount of wrestling games that ended up being released for the original Xbox. Ultimately, most wrestling fans who wanted to have a game to simulate the WWE product or to have something different would likely lean more towards the PlayStation 2 or the GameCube, as that's where more of the well-known or well-produced titles ended up landing on. But for those fans who do own Microsoft's console and are looking for an alternative that can stand out pretty well on its own against some of the major publishers, the Wild Rings is a hidden gem of sorts that's absolutely worth your time and checking out.